The worst thing that can happen to the human race is not energy depletion, economic collapse, or conquest by a totalitarian government. The one process that will take millions of years to correct is the loss of species diversity by the destruction of natural habitats. This is the folly our descendants are least likely to forgive us. E.O. Wilson, 1980. Each organism on the planet, whether it flies, swims, blossoms, or walks erect, is closely tied to a location where particular conditions prevail. This location is its habitat. In one way or another, plants and animals are being deprived of the habitats to which they are adapted.
Oh, give me a home where the buffaloes roam, and the deers and the antelopes play, and the rabbits, where seldom is heard a discouraged.
The worldwide destruction of habitats is causing the extinction of species. In America, we have eliminated 80% of the virgin forests, wetlands, and prairies, and countless species within them.
I have a sense of urgency that we need to get the answer to the question of what are we doing to the environment by reducing the diversity as rapidly as we're doing.
250,000 people are added to the world population each day. They have to eat, they use resources, they use paper, they want a space to live, and with all this resource use, especially in the United States, but in other countries too, whether rich or poor, you use land, you use ecosystems, and net result is tremendous devastation, extinction wherever you look.
In the age of the dinosaur, the Earth lost about one species every 1,000 years. We are now losing species at the rate of 1 per day. It is predicted that in the next 3 decades, 15 to 20% of all forms of life now on Earth will no longer exist. There is a growing awareness that when we lose a species forever, we lose more than beauty, more than a living companion on the planet. We lose resources that may be crucial to our survival.
It's my feeling that industry should be one of the primary supporters of conservation in this world, because what is disappearing is basically their long-range economic insurance. The substances that we have yet to discover are substances upon which business can become dependent.
I'm Tony the Tiger, and for years I've been saying Kellogg's Sugar Frosted Flakes are great, but I'll bet you don't even know what they're made of.
Corn, the single most important food crop in the United States. It has been developed from wild plants taken from natural habitats and crossbred for maximum quality. The result is that each corn plant is nearly identical. If one is susceptible to a disease or change in climate, they all are.
North American corn is based on 5 or 6 major lines of inbreds only. And if any of those get sick, we'll have a catastrophe like the 1970 corn blight.
In 1970, a fungal blight overwhelmed the corn crop, devastating it in much the same way that blight destroyed the Irish potato crop 150 years ago. The damage in the U.S. was over $5 billion. In order to prevent future disaster, scientists have been searching for disease-resistant varieties to breed with the domestic crop. The ideal plant is a perennial relative. Rooted in the same place year after year, it develops an immunity to pests and disease.
So whenever you find a perennial ancestor of a cultivated plant, you can expect a very high level of disease resistance to fungi, to viruses, and even to insects.
In 1976, Hugh Iltis sent a Christmas card to his botany friends around the world, saying that a rare perennial corn, not seen in the wild since 1917, was extinct. Although this variety was unable to breed with domestic corn, it had high research value. Rafael Guzman, a Mexican student, found what he thought was the lost corn in the mountains of southwestern Mexico. He sent samples of the seeds to Iltis, who discovered that it wasn't the lost corn at all, but an entirely new species that could be bred with domestic corn. It is Zea diploperennis, commonly called teosinte.
We also knew instantly we had something terribly important and very, very exciting, and we planned within an hour, we planned to go to Mexico. For 10, 11 hours, we were slowly trudging our way up through the cloud forest. I was getting terribly anxious. I wanted to know what was this plant like. And eventually we got to the top. Raphael yelled, "Here it is!" And I looked around and there were hundreds of plants. And I got off my mule, took a pickaxe and started digging around. And the minute I looked at those roots, I knew instantly that this was very different. And I turned to Raphael and said, "By God, this is a different species." My heart was just beating. I couldn't even speak. And Raphael, of course, was beaming from ear to ear. We had found one of the great discoveries of this century. So here we have teosinte, a plant that is basically worthless. Oh, well, I mean, a cow will eat it, but beyond that, you know, you couldn't convince anybody that this is of any value. And yet, teosinte is immune to 7 of the 9 major viruses in the world. If we get virus resistance into the corn crops of the world and increase the world corn production by 1% only, you are talking about $400 million a year saving.
Would Noah have recognized the hidden value in teosinte? A modern-day Noah would have to save more than 2 of every creature. He would have to save samples of the plants, the insects, the microorganisms, and the soil itself from every habitat on Earth.
Many people look upon wild nature as full of weeds. And I've heard this question many times. I discuss some rare or interesting species, and somebody in the audience will say, "Well, what good is it?" Well, my answer to that usually is, "What good are you?"